Brendan Rodgers yesterday was talking about a couple of Celtic players, and he said, look, these two players are up there with some of the best in Europe just now. He was obviously talking about Kyogo Furuhashi, and if you wait to the end of the video in a couple of minutes, I'll tell you the second player. But obviously Kyogo yesterday, he said, look, he showed incredible awareness to anticipate the pass from Callum McGregor as he nodded home his fourth goal in 6 games so far this season. With the Champions League game just on Tuesday evening against Feyenoord, you know, the Celtic manager has backed his man again. He says, look, he has the same qualities as top strikers in Europe. If Kyogo can be half the player that Henrik Larsson was for Celtic, we're going to have some striker on our hands. Brendan Rodgers went on to say, look, he's a top-class finisher. There's no doubt about it. I think he was out injured. When he wasn't out injured last season and he was coming back, it was great for him. He's definitely got the qualities to shine at that level in the Champions League. He's fast, he's direct, and he's a good finisher. He's consistent in his pressure for Celtic. He said he's got the qualities to go on and shine at that level if he applies the same ethos. He says, look, he's fast, he's direct. He says at that level, you look at other top strikers around Europe, normally they have those attributes also. Celtic's player of the season, Kyogo, started the campaign off where he left last year and he was scoring goals. And Brendan Rodgers says, look, he says, the winner at Ibrox was an incredible finish. He took the ball so sweetly on the volley and he's hoping for more in the Champions League. Kyogo is no stranger to scoring in Europe. He obviously scored last season. And look, he said, look, Champions League is where he needs to do it. He says, if he can do it in the Champions League and do it for us constantly, he says he's going to be some player. And he's the man of the moment just now for Celtic. And we need to make sure that he gets the service. Up next is the player that Brendan Rodgers said is just like a brand new signing for Celtic. He said, look, he says, coming back, Rio Hatate has proven that he's going to be some player. He says, look, David Turnbull, we can all agree, he's been looking a bit ropey over the past few games. I did have Turnbull starting the match, and much to the disappointment of a lot of people on the Friday Night Live saying, why you got Turnbull starting? It was for one reason and one reason only, match fitness. David Turnbull had to start because he was one of the players that played in that position that had played so many games this season and had a full pre-season. That's the only reason David Turnbull played. David Turnbull will find himself back on the bench in a couple of weeks when Rio Hatate is back up to full speed. Getting Rio game time before the Champions League on Tuesday was a must for Brendan Rodgers. Brendan Rodgers went on to say, he said, look, he looks an absolutely brilliant player. He says he's brilliant, he's like a new player to us. He says he's the type of player that we don't have in terms of his dynamism in his game. He says he's really focused and he looks a bit tired towards the end of the game, but that'll come with game time. He says, look, Callum McGregor is one player that we have at Celtic, and we all know how vital Callum McGregor is to Celtic. Rio Hatate, he says, he is the creative force in the Celtic midfield just now. He says when he comes back and he is in full flow, Celtic will be unstoppable. He said, look, you have to look at the second half. He said the proof that Hatate is the man that can make the Celtic team tick. He says you need to look no further than the second half of yesterday. It seems that he's now recovered and hopefully he'll be on that flight. He will be on that flight to Holland for the game on Tuesday. Hatate proved last season that he can mix it up with the European elite. He was fantastic for us last season. If he can replicate that this season and we can keep Kyogo focused and fit for the Champions League, we're going to have at least a slight chance of finishing third. So it's hopefully, once that he's negotiated a couple of games in the Champions League, you know, he'll show that he's up there as one of the top midfield players, and you never know where his career could go in Europe. And we need to get the contract negotiations finalised. They said, look, we have started contract negotiations, but that kind of business will take time and it will sort itself out, says Brendan Rodgers. Do you think that Rio Hatate will start on Tuesday evening? I thought he did look a bit tired towards the end of the game. Look, it's obvious during the summer he had that transfer thing going on in his head and the speculation that didn't want it to go away. He wanted to make sure, but people said in the channel, maybe Rio Hatate really did want to go. Maybe thought that Brendan Rodgers was going to come in and save him from any more Scottish football. But you never know what's going on in a player's head. And the fact that he said, let's get the contract negotiations restarted once the window is closed. and my mind is in a clear frame of mind, and obviously that's what's happened. It looks exciting that he's going to sign a new contract. If he does, he probably will sign a new contract, in my personal opinion. Who doesn't want a wage increase? Look, if he gets sold next summer, that's fine. He goes with our well wishes, and we get a hefty profit in the bank. Until then, give the guy a pay rise, give him what he wants, and make sure that he has a good Champions League. He's one of the most important players at Celtic. The likes of Turnbull will get demoted back to the bench because Hatate is back fit. That's the only reason that I had Turnbull starting on Saturday. And what about Kyogo? How far do you think that Kyogo can really go as a player? Can he be just as good as Henrik? He needs to do it in the Champions League. He needs to do it this season. He needs to score a good couple of goals in the Champions League. Henrik Larsson was able to score goals in the Europa and in the Champions League at his time at Celtic. Little Kyogo needs to do it. He needs to step up to the mark and put the ones away. He was unlucky last season where some of the ones that went wide, but you know, this season he has to score. He has to score in the big games, and that's all that matters. He scored in the big game 2 weeks ago, and he was fantastic. You know, that header, people were saying yesterday, that header that he took was a bit like something Larsson would do. Tell me your thoughts in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the live this evening. If you haven't watched the live, make sure you go back and watch that. And I shall see you on tomorrow morning's video.
Roll up to the party, roll up to the party, roll up to the party, roll